guys, and welcome back to another case of Murderous Minds, where we go into the life and crimes of a lot of different types of criminals and see what makes a person truly evil. On today's case, we'll be looking into the kidnapping of Michelle Knight, Amanda Berry, and Gina Dejesus. The reason I found it online to begin with, and then I just kept on looking further into it, and I ended up reading both books by, the first book I read was by Amanda Berry and Gina Dejesus, and then the second book that I read was by Michelle Knight. The first book by the two girls, it was really interesting, and it gave a really good insight to what they went through, but I mean, no one can actually really realize the kind of scope and the kind of things that they went through. And then with Michelle Knight's book, I felt it was even deeper into like what they actually went through, and it was really hard to read, honestly, because it was so raw and kind of like, it's not something you're used to reading, and the fact that you know that it's a real story and it's a real situation is kind of like makes it even harder to read, I guess. But I think it's worth a read, and it's actually worth kind of delving further into like what happened to these girls. But the plus side, or the bright side, is that they did survive and they are alive to tell the tales, which is not as common as you may believe. But anyways, let's get into this case. And if I do look down, I don't mean to, I'm just checking my notes and want to make sure the dates are right and everything. So anyways, let's get started. I wanted to get a little bit into who Ariel Castro was as a person. To begin, he was born July 11th, 1960 in San Juan, Puerto Rico. As a young child, his parents ended up splitting up, and his mother moved to the USA and his father stayed in Puerto Rico. And during that time in Puerto Rico, he said that he was molested, but some of it can't be proven, and some of his family members do disregard that he was abused, but he does claim that this is the reason why he kidnapped the girls that he did. When he moved to the USA, he met his future girlfriend, and her name was Grimelda. Eventually moved into their own home on 2207 Seymour Avenue, which becomes a place that is very known and eventually will be torn down. But the relationship with Grimelda, there were constant calls of domestic violence and also beatings and just very, very bad situation. One instance, Grimelda was thrown down the stairs, and Ariel was actually convicted and was going to go through with the court order, but Grimelda wouldn't testify against him in fear that she would be attacked. So he went off scot-free for this event. In 1996, Grimelda finally got a chance to get away from Ariel, but she said that he continued to harass her and her children even though she was away from the home. And in 2005, the Cavanaugh County, sorry if I say that wrong, of Domestic Relations Court accused Castro of inflicting severe injuries onto Grimelda and also of abducting their children without notice or without her knowledge. And eventually a temporary restraining order was given to Grimelda, but it seemed that Ariel had no respect for authority, so he continued to harass her, and eventually in 2012 she died of implications from the brain trauma that she endured with her time with Castro. During this time, Castro was working as a bus driver for elementary students, and for the most part he was a normal bus driver, but as there was more going on with his life and more things happening with the kidnappees and everything, he started to slip up in his day-to-day job. There were a few claims that Castro took an illegal U-turn while he was having children on the bus, which is extremely dangerous. And then two, the second time, which was a lot more serious, a child was left on the bus, and instead of returning the child when he realized they were on the bus, he just told them to duck down, and he proceeded to have lunch and then returned the child to school. And later the parent found out and complained, and he was later fired because of that incident. Because even with these predispositions, he was never checked, and his home was never checked as well, so the girls were never found. Anyways, I'd like to get into the girls kidnapping. The first being Michelle Knight. She was born April 23rd, 1981. And growing up, her nickname was Shorty. And from reading her book, it seemed like she had a lot of difficulty growing up and just a not very stable home life. From the descriptions in her book, a lot of the times her parents brought in different family members, and there was different people always coming into the home, so much so that the kids didn't even have like a set bedroom or a place to stay. And she even said in her book that she was molested from a family friend, or I believe it was like a family member, and the only way that she felt that she could escape from this was by running away. And then she ended up being homeless for a time and living on the streets, and then she eventually sold drugs for a little bit. But I don't feel like that like changes anything or a reason why she should be kidnapped or anything like that. I just think it's kind of interesting to the story, and I think it's really sad that someone who like endured so much in childhood also had to endure so much in adulthood, and then continues to like be positive and be a really strong, encouraging person. So I really kind of look up to her in a way. So anyways, so after she returned home after being homeless, her parents weren't extremely concerned about her well-being, and I feel like that's why when she was kidnapped by Ariel Castro, there wasn't like a mass media coverage or anything like that. So she was kind of forgotten, honestly, and which is really sad. And I feel like she kind of had to go within herself to encourage herself to continue on, even though she didn't have family or friends like looking out for her and knowing that she had someone looking for her, I guess. So, and she also later had a son as well in high school, and he was taken away because there was some situation in the home with her stepfather being abusive towards the son, so he was taken away. And then she, during that time, was attempting to do the steps to get him back and try to get him back into a decent home. And I feel like that's just really difficult when you're in that type of situation when no one can help you out. August 23rd, 2002, the day that she went missing, she was headed out to the social workers meeting to try and get access to her son and try to get him back home. And she was attempting to go downtown, and she walked there. She wasn't able to find the appointment, so she began asking people for directions, and unfortunately she stumbled upon Ariel Castro, who eventually offered her a ride and told her that he knew the directions to her appointment. She eventually recognized him as her friend's father, so she decided to take the ride and hop in the car. And as they pulled away, he said that he had puppies that maybe she could give to her son and that she would really enjoy. So she decided to go along with him to his home on Seymour Avenue. And once they got into the home, he attacked her and bound and chained her and it was just an awful, awful scene. And from the book, she said that she was chained up for 3 whole days without being fed or anything. And then eventually he took her down and sexually assaulted her, and it just continued from there. And I don't really want to get into the details too much of that. If you are curious about the details of that, I would definitely recommend her book. I just think it's really hard, and I don't really have a personal knowledge with it, so I don't feel comfortable talking about it, but just know that it was very disturbing. And for the whole entire time she was chained, and there was no access to bathrooms and no access to showers except maybe like once a week or something like that. And it's just not a situation you want to be in. Anyways, because of her history of running away and being homeless and everything like that, her parents didn't even report her missing, like I had said, which is just really sad. And there wasn't even a search party for her. But anyways, she was there for an entire year. And then we get to Amanda Berry. Amanda Berry at the time, and I don't know if I mentioned this, but this is all taking place in Cleveland, Ohio in that time. And all of these areas are in literally like a 5-10 mile radius. And I'll put a map on the screen so you guys can kind of see the area and how close Amanda Berry, Michelle Knight, and Gina Dejesus were to Ariel Castro, and how close the police were to actually finding them. Anyways, Amanda Berry was born April 22nd, 1986, and she disappeared April 21st, 2003. One thing that was interesting about her disappearance, that it was the day before her 17th birthday, and she was on her way to work at Burger King, and this was on West 110th Lorraine Avenue. She decided after work she got off early and she wanted to have someone pick her up, so she called her sister and then she called her kind of boyfriend at the time, and neither one picked up or could pick her up, so she decided to walk home, and that's where she made an unfortunate mistake. On her way home, she saw Ariel Castro and his daughter in the passenger side, and she recognized them, so she smiled at them. And eventually Ariel pulled around, and he had dropped his daughter off, and he asked if Amanda would like a ride, and she thought that his daughter was still in the car, but she wasn't. But she still got in the car anyways because she recognized him. And then Castro asked if she wanted to see his daughter, and she agreed, so they decided to go to the house and go visit. So eventually he also locked and chained her up. And the thing that I find interesting, well, not really interesting, or more disturbing, I guess, is that he kind of pinned the two girls against each other, either by giving one more things or one less things, or saying that she told me this, so you're gonna get punished. So it was just kind of a way so that they wouldn't work together to get out, I suppose. During the first week of her disappearance, the police considered her a runaway, but her parents always considered that she was missing and something happened. The thing that changed their mind is Castro was foolish enough to make a phone call with Amanda's phone a week after her disappearance, saying that they were lovers, they were together, and that they were running off together, which is so disturbing. And the police quickly changed that she was kidnapped and that they were looking for her. According to Michelle Knight in her book, I believe she she became pregnant at least 5 to 6 times, and in that time Castro would either hit her in the stomach with a metal weight or punch her in the stomach to make her have a miscarriage because he didn't want the evidence of having a baby or having to take care of it. And that's what makes it even sadder to me. But I mean, it's good in the sense that there was a baby born. On December 25th, 2006, Amanda Berry gave birth to a little baby girl. When Amanda went into labor, Castro got a big water tub that you use for a little kiddie swimming pool and filled it with a little bit and put it on the bed so that she wouldn't make a mess of the bed, and told Michelle that if she didn't perform the birth that she would be killed. So Michelle was kind of familiar with birth, giving birth to her own son once, and the baby was born not breathing, and Michelle had to give it CPR, and it ended up breathing, and the baby was born Jocelyn. And I feel like Jocelyn, his daughter, was the first step into him kind of having humanity and kind of caring about other people, and maybe deciding that he wanted to kind of change his ways, in my opinion. But I could be totally wrong. And the next kidnappee, I guess I can call them, is Gina Dejesus. And she was the youngest of the three girls. And the strange thing is that Ariel actually knew her father. They actually grew up together in Puerto Rico. And she was born February 13th, 1990. And she was last seen on West 105th and Lorraine Avenue, so only a few blocks away from where Amanda Berry was taken. And Gina and Ariel's daughter, Arlene, were hanging out, and they wanted to have a sleepover, so Arlene called Grimilda and asked for permission. Unfortunately, Grimilda said no, so the two girls split ways. And Ariel eventually pulled up on Gina and asked if he had seen Arlene, and Gina said that she had just seen her, and Ariel asked if she would show him where Arlene was. So Gina, being kind of naive and just wanted to be a helpful soul, just hopped in and helped Ariel. And they eventually went back to his home, and Arlene and Gina thought that Arlene would be at the house and that they could visit. And Ariel tended to use his kids and it seemed like his daughter as a way to get access to these young girls and have them trust him in a way. One thing I found kind of tragic about Gina's disappearance was when the DeJesuses announced that Gina was missing. There was no Amber Alert put out because she wasn't seen being abducted, but the thing was, she was abducted, so the Amber Alert should have been issued. So I think that was a really stupid rule, and I haven't looked into it more to see if the rule has been changed, but if it hasn't, that's pretty crazy to me. Another thing about Ariel is that he attended a lot of the search parties that the DeJesuses had, and he would even come up to Gina's mother and hug her and comfort her and offer whatever help he could in finding Gina. And the police somewhat did believe that Amanda and Gina were related because they were such close proximity. A year after Gina's disappearance, the FBI released a composite sketch and a description of a male Latino, 25 to 35, 5 feet 10 inches, and 165 to 185, and with green eyes and a goatee. Castro was shorter and he had brown eyes, but he did have the goatee and he was around the same weight. So people were kind of looking for the wrong guy in some senses of the word. During their time of captivity, like I said, most of the time they were either bound or chained in their bedrooms, and they were only allowed a small TV and a mattress and a small bucket to use for the restroom. He would feed them very infrequently and feed them like McDonald's, and occasionally he would feed his mother's like leftovers and things like that. On May 6, 2013, Ariel left for the day to get some McDonald's, and for the first time he had left Amanda's door open. Normally Jocelyn was also locked inside with Amanda, and they would only be let out when Ariel was home. And Amanda was too afraid to leave the door or leave the room, but Jocelyn was looking around for Ariel, and she kept asking like where her papa was. And eventually Amanda got up the courage to open the door and see outside, and she saw that Ariel wasn't around. So she went to the front door, where she saw that it was bolted and she wasn't able to get out. So she began pounding outside, and she was able to reach out her hand, and eventually someone did come and save her and busted out the bottom of the door, and she was able to free herself and Jocelyn, where she was able to make this 911 call, which is very, very famous for her expression and also how terrible the 911 operator is.
911. Do you need
Hello, please. Help me. I'm Amanda Berry.
You need police, fire, or ambulance?
I need police.
Okay, and what's going on there?
I've been kidnapped, and I've been missing for 10 years, and I'm here. I'm free now.
Okay, and what's your address?
2207 Seymour Avenue.
2207 Seymour. Looks like you're calling me from 2210.
Huh?
Looks like you're calling me from 2210.
I can't hear you.
It looks like you were calling me from 2210 Seymour.
Yeah, I'm across the street. I'm using the phone.
Okay, stay there with those neighbors. Talk to the police when they get there.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, talk to the police when they get there.
Okay. Man, I'm gonna wait right now.
We're going to send them as soon as we get a car open.
No, I need them now before he gets back.
All right, we're sending them, okay?
Okay, I mean, like,
Who's the guy who's the guy who went out?
His name is Ariel Castro.
All right, how old is he?
He's like 52.
All right, and
I'm Amanda Berry. I've been on the news for the last 10 years.
Okay, I got that here. I already.
Gina.
And you said, what was his name again?
Ariel Castro.
And is he white, black, or Hispanic?
He's Hispanic.
What's he wearing?
I don't know, because he's not here right now. That's
When
why I got away.
when he left, what was he wearing?
Sweetheart, it's a pity. What?
All right, the police are on the way. Talk to them when they get there.
And once the police arrived, Michelle and Gina were too afraid to come out, so the police actually had to kind of carry them out, and Michelle was wrapped around the police officer because they were so terrified, and because he had traumatized them so much, they thought that he was coming back to beat them. So after being arrested, Castro and his brother were assumed to be a part of it together, but they later found out that it was just strictly Castro, and it was all him and whatever he was doing. And shortly after being convicted, he was convicted for the kidnapping and also assault of the multiple accounts for each girl. Shortly after being convicted and being in prison for only a month, in September 3rd, 2013, he committed suicide by hanging. And there is a lot of kind of debate whether the police and the jail keepers kind of weren't looking into him and kind of observing him as much as they should be. But I feel like it's because of his crimes and also what he's done that maybe it was kind of let go in some ways, which is kind of sad for the justice system, but I also understand because he was such an evil person. But it's sad that these girls endured years and years of torture and just cruelty on a really extreme level that he couldn't even withstand that for just a month. So it just kind of shows what kind of person he is. And honestly, I feel like it would take someone that is kind of a sociopath that really only cares about themselves, and maybe in some ways he made himself believe that these girls kind of accepted it and that he kind of saved them, and maybe that they were in love and maybe that they were some kind of family. But in reality, it was a cruel act, and luckily these girls lived and they get to write emotional stories of hope and just enduring. And it's just a really inspiring story if you can look past the kind of darkness of it. But I do find it really interesting. And if you want to look into the books, or also there is a Lifetime movie, which actually was very interesting and very eye-opening, I would say. Anyways, I hope you guys don't mind this kind of darker kind of subject matter. I do find it really interesting, and I do kind of like investigating and finding out more and finding other people's perspective. And if you don't like that, I apologize. I do other makeup videos, but for this, in this series, I will be continuing to do stories on darker matters and kind of more criminal minds aspects of things. So if you do, give it a like and subscribe. I will be doing many, many more, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, guys.